Many times the government has looked as if it was trying to get to the truth. One of the most widely discussed government efforts to check into UFOs was the Pentagon's Operation Blue Book. The studies conducted in the late 1950s and early 60s are seen by some today as both a legitimate effort to find out what's out there and just another waste of taxpayer money. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, a member of the Operation Blue Book Task Force, would later be called upon to be a technical advisor for the 1977 Steven Spielberg epic Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In his later years, Hynek would tell reporters that he had joined the Operation Blue Book group with an open mind but with great disbelief. After seeing the years of research, he slowly changed his mind, seeing the entire issue of UFOs as contradicting the usual government line. Hynek did not believe that there was any truth in the government's often heard statements that people were seeing swamp gas, or weather balloons, or the planet Venus. He said he genuinely felt that although there were few answers, UFOs did exist and something was going on. By the way, for a time, he was head of the Center for UFO Studies at the University of Chicago. He also served as a professor of astronomy at Northwestern University. Sadly, the majority of today's UFO scientists, those who agree with Hynek, do not have his credentials, or they are so super focused on a similar aspect of the issue, they are avoiding the total picture. There seems to be very few truly open-minded, credible experts on UFOs with an international reputation. What we do have is a handful of research groups with a marginally famous scientist at the helm of each, hell-bent on finding a conclusion that will suit their research so they can show the people who funded their work that the funders were right and the research did pay off. They focus on one issue and only report the findings that agree with the conclusion they want to reach in order to justify their funding. The great American scientist, lecturer, and TV host, the late Dr. Carl Sagan, had some interesting theories on the presence of UFOs. Sagan, who often debated Dr. Hynek in a wide range of forums over the years, first became very interested in the UFO question in the early 1960s. He told other scientists that while he was quite skeptical of any extraordinary answer to the UFO issue, he thought scientists should study the phenomenon, especially because of the growing interest among the public. Sagan wrote to friends about what he perceived as, quote, logical fallacies in the work of others. He rejected the concept of extraterrestrials being involved. Now, it's very interesting to note that in spite of his feelings about science, Sagan still felt strongly that there was enough information out there, much of it in the form of credible sightings, that major research money should be spent, at least because there was such widespread public interest in UFO reports. We talked about Operation Blue Book. In 1966, Sagan was part of a committee that sought to examine the work of the Blue Book group from a more scientific perspective. Sagan suggested that the Blue Book organization lacked the level of scientific expertise it needed to have done a good job. He recommended that a university-based project be mounted to look into the issue. The group that emerged was led by noted physicist Dr. Edward Condon. In that group's final report, Condon and his colleagues noted that something was out there, and more importantly, those things did not seem to pose a threat to national security. Now, we have to remember that during the Cold War, there was a constant overhanging cloud of concern about the perceived Soviet threat, and that any scientific report being issued at the time would have certainly treated those concerns. By the way, one of the best papers ever published on the UFO phenomenon was written by Carl Sagan. It was a compilation of speeches and recorded debates on UFOs involving some of the nation's top men of science. It was published in 1972. Sagan also looked at UFOs in his 1980 Cosmos TV series. In one of the shows, Sagan admitted that with the constant worry about the Soviets and the fact that organized religion would not stand for the presence of other beings in the solar system, the entire issue was one that was very difficult to discuss. I have mentioned several so-called hotbeds of UFO sightings and unexplained phenomenon. The latest region of the U.S. to be the focus of research is Alaska. During the past 10 years, there have been numerous reports of disappearances, alien abductions, and strange weather-related events. The disappearances seem to be the most alarming. Now, before going any further, it's only fair to admit that in such a widespread cold area as is Alaska, it's natural for people to disappear from time to time. But people are disappearing there at an eerie rate. So many people have shown up missing in one region of the 49th state, so many light planes have either crashed or disappeared, locals have begun to call the area the Alaskan Bermuda Triangle. Even the native peoples of that area, the Tlingit Indians, have a tradition relating to strange and ongoing happenings. They believe there is an evil spirit called Kushtaka that captures people who get lost and whisk them away to a region possibly in the sky. By the way, the rate of people reported missing in Alaska is almost twice the national average, and Alaska has the highest percentage of people who are reported lost and never found. There are nearly 3,000 missing persons reports on the books in Alaska. That is 4 out of every 1,000 people. For those of us who do believe that the aliens are here, or that they have returned, there is a really embarrassing aspect to the entire issue, and that is the great number of people who have gained national media attention with their wacko reports of personal abductions, UFOs parked on their roofs, and other obviously concocted stories. The sad thing is that there are many credible, interesting, seemingly adjusted people who say they have been abducted. They are able to provide incredible, very detailed reports on their encounters, including articulate verbal descriptions of their abductors and extremely detailed recountings of what the inside of spacecraft looked like. These people are in the extreme minority. For them, it must be very, very difficult to discuss the public. Sadly, the majority of these storytellers seem to be either in need of psychiatric help or are looking for their 15 minutes of fame. All this puts people such as myself and others who have seen something at a disadvantage, for we know we are telling the truth, but we are telling the truth in an arena that is tainted by kooks, cover-ups, and misdirections. We are in a world where the tabloids and sleazy Hollywood films have painted the wrong picture of aliens and alien encounters. How can anyone believe in alien visits to the Earth when grocery store tabloids, the so-called rag mags, continue to show alleged photos of aliens hobnobbing with members of Congress or having lunch at the White House? One of the best sources of UFO sightings for the past 3 decades has been the National UFO Reporting Center. For years it was based in Seattle. Now it's moved its headquarters, lock, stock, and barrel, to an incredibly interesting location. It's a former missile base in eastern Washington. In recent years, I've gotten some great information from this group. In preparing my hour-long CD audio briefing, How to Document Your UFO Sighting, Don't Be Called a Liar, I did an extensive interview with the longtime director of the center.